The snow fell like silence, not the gentle snow of a peaceful winter, but the thick, choking kind that made Skyrim feel older than history, like the land had been buried many times before, and would be buried again long after kings had turned to dust. The wind dragged ice across stone, and whispered through pine forests like a prayer that had forgotten the words. Above the jagged spine of the throat of the world, the sky bruised itself purple and black. Then it tore. There was no lightning, no storm, no sound that a mortal throat could imitate. The world simply split, as if reality had been forced to blink with a blade pressed against its eyelid. A ring of light appeared in the air over an empty ridge, a perfect circle, too clean, too deliberate, too unnatural for any Nord sorcery or Dwemer mechanism. It radiated heat without flame and brilliance without warmth. Then he stepped through. He was tall, impossibly tall, yet the height was not the most striking thing. Men taller than others existed in Skyrim. Giants existed, trolls existed. What stepped through this rupture was not merely a man, it was authority made flesh. Golden plate armor, not hammered like Nordic steel but crafted like scripture. Its surface carried marks that resembled symbols but were not runes. It seemed ancient and new at the same time, like an artifact that had existed before the world had learned what time was. A cloak the color of old blood hung from his shoulders, heavy as judgment. His face was calm, too calm, like storms and wars were weather he had learned to ignore. He looked across Skyrim, across mountain and valley, across smoke rising from distant holds, and his eyes did not widen in surprise. He simply observed. Behind him, the rupture sealed soundlessly, leaving no evidence that it had ever existed. The Emperor of mankind exhaled, and the wind, somehow, quieted. He lifted his gauntleted hand. The snow that was falling near him froze in mid-air, not as ice, but as suspended white fragments like a broken painting. His gaze turned upward, toward the peak of the world. He listened. Not with ears, with a mind that had crushed gods. Something was humming here, not the warp. This place was different, crude in some ways, yet loud in others. A realm soaked in myth, saturated with belief, thick with the residue of oaths and sacrifices, dragons and gods, kings and murder, and beneath it all, the scent of something unpleasant, influence, other powers, other claims, other chains. His lips parted slightly. An occupied world, he said, voice low, yet the mountains heard it. Then he began walking. Each step left no footprint, not because his boots did not touch the snow, but because the snow refused to mark him. That same morning, smoke rose from Helgen. The village was caught between politics and prophecy, the way Skyrim always was. Imperial banners flapped stiffly above a hurried execution yard. Soldiers shouted orders with strained discipline. Prisoners were arranged like firewood. Among them stood a man with rough bindings on his wrists and murder in his eyes. Ulfric Stormcloak, Jarl of Windhelm, the rebel king of the Nords. The headsman adjusted his grip. The priestess of Arche murmured last rites that even she didn't fully believe. Nearby, General Tullius watched as if trying to bury his exhaustion under military efficiency. Then the sky screamed, not in sound, but in presence. A shadow crossed the execution yard. Soldiers flinched and turned, looking for a cloud that wasn't there. Above the timber wall of Helgen, beyond the mountains, a beam of golden light briefly split the horizon like dawn born wrong. Everyone froze. Then came another sound, the one Skyrim had learned to fear since the old days. A roar, a dragon's roar. Alduin descended like the end of law. Like the world's anger finally given wings. The first impact shattered stone. Fire rolled over the yard. Men screamed. The execution became a massacre. Helgen became ash. Ulfric, freed by chaos, stared up at the dragon with a hatred older than rebellion. And somewhere, far from the flames, The Emperor paused on a ridge and watched Alduin's shadow crossing the snow like a moving eclipse. A dragon, not merely beast, not merely worm. A creature bound to this world's mythological infrastructure, something like a weapon and a symbol both. A king of flying monsters. The Emperor's eyes narrowed slightly. Axiom, beast, he whispered. Anchored in belief, he watched as Alduin tore the village apart. Then he raised his hand, and the dragon, mid-flight, jerked like something had suddenly grabbed the concept of its spine. Alduin roared again, but the roar changed. It contained confusion now. For the first time in 1,000 years, Alduin had encountered resistance that did not come from blade or shout. The Emperor held him for a moment, not physically, but psychically, as one holds an insect pinned under a glass. He examined the dragon, examined the metaphysical architecture that made it possible, examined the world that had created a creature like this. Then he released it, not because he could not crush Alduin, but because he did not yet know the chain Alduin was attached to. The Emperor did not destroy enemies without understanding what fed them. Alduin continued his assault, unaware that its greatest predator had arrived not in the sky, but in the realm beneath thought. And that predator was beginning to plan. Whiterun smelled of wood smoke and wet fur. The city was a loud contradiction, a proud hold built like a fortress, ruled by Nords who preached independence while trading constantly with the Empire. Guards wore steel and suspicion. Farmers and merchants hurried about their lives, as if civil war was merely background noise. And then he walked through the front gate. The guards saw him first. 2 men stiffened instantly, hands going to swords. One opened his mouth to shout a command, but the words died in his throat, not because he was silenced by force, because his instinct recognized something too dangerous to provoke. The Emperor's armor shone like burnished sunlight, but it did not reflect the world, it ignored it. The air around him felt heavy, as if the molecules themselves were unsure how to behave in his presence. One guard found the courage to speak. "Halt, state your business in Whiterun." The Emperor looked at him, just looked. The guard's knees weakened, his eyes watered involuntarily. It felt like being measured by an ancient judge, like being weighed against a standard no mortal could reach. The Emperor did not kill him. He did not need to. "My business," the Emperor said calmly, "is to assess your world." The guards exchanged terrified looks. One muttered, "Daedra." Another whispered, "No, not Daedra." The Emperor stepped forward. The guards stepped aside. Inside the city, people turned. A drunk in the marketplace sobered instantly. A child reached for her mother. A priest of Kinnereth felt his own prayer die in his mouth. The Emperor ascended the steps toward Dragon's Reach, the Jarl's palace that sat over Whiterun like a crown. Inside, Jarl Balgruf, the Greater, argued with his council, face tight, with frustration. He looked up, and his entire hall went silent. The Jarl rose slowly, hand tightening on the hilt of his axe, not to threaten, but because leaders clung to symbols when reality grew strange. "Who are you?" Balgruf asked, voice steady with effort. The Emperor's gaze moved across the hall. The guards, the steward, the housecarl Irilith. He assessed their discipline, their fear, their strength. Then he spoke. "I am the Emperor of mankind." The title was meaningless to them, but his tone made it feel like the title had once made galaxies kneel. Balgruf narrowed his eyes. "Skyrim already has an emperor." The Emperor's expression did not change. "Yes," he said, "I have sensed the false one." That statement alone, false one, caused murmurs of outrage and confusion. Irilith stepped forward slightly. "Careful, stranger. These are dangerous words." The Emperor looked at her. Irilith was Dunmer-hardened, disciplined. She had seen war. Yet her lips parted in involuntary surprise, as if some part of her soul had suddenly remembered fear. The Emperor turned back to Balgruf. Your world is fractured, he said. Your people bleed themselves for petty banners while far older threats stir beneath your myths. Balgruf's jaw clenched. You speak as if you know our land. I do not need to know its names to understand its structure. Balgruf's eyes flicked to Farengar's secret. Fire, his court wizard. Farengar swallowed and approached cautiously. My Jarl, if I may, this being this individual, he is not using any spell I recognize. The Emperor looked at Farengar as one might look at a child holding a candle. You hide behind language you do not own, the Emperor said. Farengar stiffened. Pardon? You call your crude psychic manipulation magic. You call your mortal will shouts. You call your extra-dimensional parasites gods. Every word was a knife pressed into their comfortable ignorance. Balgruf's patience thinned. If you are here to insult Skyrim, you will be removed. The Emperor's gaze did not harden, but the air did. Outside, clouds shifted. The light in the hall dimmed. Then the Emperor took one step forward, not toward Balgruf, toward the very center of the room, and reality bent. The torches flared without fuel. The banners fluttered without wind. The stone floor creaked, as if Dragon's Reach itself was struggling under a sudden metaphysical weight. Several guards stumbled back, hands shaking. Balgruf's face tightened, but he held his ground. The Emperor paused, then spoke softly, not as a threat, but as a verdict. I am not here to rule your city. He raised his hand and the air shimmered. A faint image appeared like a psychic projection burned into the air. It showed Helgen in flames. It showed Alduin. It showed the dragon's fire consuming men like straw. Gasps filled the hall. Balgruf's face changed, fear giving way to rage. A dragon, Balgruf spat. Yes, the Emperor replied. And he is not alone. He let the image shift. Now it showed black spires, strange realms, pale princes seated in darkness. It showed a hooded assassin's hand slipping a blade between ribs. It showed a pale vampire drinking from a screaming throat. It showed a grey-robed monk on a mountain speaking words that cracked the sky. It showed Skyrim's entire system in a brutal montage of truth. Balgruf's voice came quieter. What are you? The Emperor lowered his hand. I am your world's escalation. High Hrothgar was not merely a monastery, it was an idea. A place where breath became scripture, where voice became weapon, where men sought peace by mastering force. The Greybeards were not political, they were not soldiers. They were the keepers of a violent language. They heard him before they saw him, not through the snowstorm, not through sight. They heard the Emperor's presence in the structure of the mountain, like the stone itself was humming in distress. When he climbed the 7,000 steps, the snow did not touch his armor. A pilgrim on the path saw him from a distance, dropped to his knees, and began to pray out of sheer instinct. The Emperor ignored him. At the gates of High Hrothgar, the ancient doors trembled as if deciding whether to open. Then they opened. Inside, the air was quiet in a way that felt unnatural. The Greybeards did not rush. They did not speak loudly. Their entire culture was built on restraint. Arngir approached Grey, stooped, eyes bright with deep knowledge. He stopped as if walking into a wall. His voice, when it came, was cautious. You are not dragonborn. The Emperor studied him. You are the loudest silent man I have ever met, the Emperor said. Speak. Arngir swallowed. Why have you come to High Hrothgar? The Emperor's gaze moved to the walls covered in ancient carvings. I have come, he said, to judge your voice. The Greybeard stiffened. Arngir's eyes narrowed. The voice is sacred. The Emperor's expression remained calm. Nothing is sacred, he said, only useful. That sentence felt like blasphemy in this place. The other Greybeards shifted behind Arngir. Their power was restrained, but not absent. Arngir's tone sharpened. If you insult our way, the Emperor raised a hand gently, not violently, not angrily, just gently. The air thickened. The greybeards gasped as their lungs suddenly resisted breath, as if respiration itself required permission. Arngir's eyes widened in alarm. The Emperor looked at them like a teacher addressing stubborn students. "You wield the power of the soul through vibration," he said. "You can break stone with language. You can command creatures bound to myth, yet you chain yourselves with cowardice and call it wisdom." Arngir struggled to speak. "We seek peace." The Emperor leaned closer. "Peace," he said softly, "is what remains when all threats have been removed." Then he released the pressure. The greybeards inhaled sharply, shaken. Arngir stared at him now with something new, not only fear, but recognition. "What are you?" Arngir whispered. The Emperor's gaze lifted to the ceiling, beyond it, beyond Skyrim. "I am what happens," he said, "when a species refuses to be prey." A long silence. Then, unexpectedly, the greybeards bowed not in submission, but in instinctive acknowledgement of a greater power. Arngir spoke carefully. "There is a prophecy. Alduin's return, the Dragonborn." The Emperor cut him off. "Prophecies are chains," he said. "I do not obey chains." Arngir's eyes tightened. "Even gods cannot break prophecy." The Emperor looked at him, and for the first time, something like faint amusement appeared in his eyes. "I am not one of your gods." Then he walked past Arngir, deeper into High Hrothgar, toward the ancient word wall that pulsed with draconic power. He placed his hand on the stone. The carvings flared, and the entire monastery shook. Arngir stumbled, horrified. He's reading it." The Emperor's mind touched the word wall not like a mortal learning language, but like a scientist dissecting an organ. He understood the words instantly, not because he was Dragonborn, but because he was the Emperor. He spoke the first syllable, experimentally. The sound was not a shout. It was something far worse. It was a psychic command reinforced by absolute biological authority. The stone floor cracked. The air screamed. The wind outside High Hrothgar reversed direction and slammed into the mountain like an ocean wave. Far away, in the depths of Skyrim, dragons sleeping beneath ice stirred in alarm, and Alduin, soaring above ruined Helgen, jerked mid-flight as if someone had called his name with a knife. The civil war was, to Skyrim, the center of reality, but to the Emperor of mankind, it was a distraction, two groups of humans bleeding each other under the manipulation of a third party. When he entered Solitude, the city of imperial loyalty, his arrival was met with strict discipline and fear. General Tullius stood in castle door, hearing reports of strange events, of Helgen, of dragons, of rumors that a golden warlord walked Skyrim like a living omen. When the Emperor entered the war room unannounced, soldiers reached for swords. Then they stopped. Their instincts honed in war screamed that drawing steel was suicide. Tullius turned slowly. He was not a Nord. He was a commander, a realist, a man who believed in structure, and even he stiffened. "What in oblivion are you?" Tullius demanded. The Emperor's gaze measured him. "A competent man," the Emperor said, "trapped in an incompetent system." Tullius bristled. "You will address the Empire with respect." The Emperor stepped forward. "I have built empires," he said. "I have broken empires. I have erased species who thought themselves eternal." He leaned down slightly close enough that Tullius could see his eyes clearly. "I do not respect yours." That single sentence made the air feel colder. Tullius swallowed hard but held his ground. "If you are a threat to the Emperor," the Emperor interrupted. "Your Emperor is a puppet," he said, "a decaying political organ kept alive by fear and compromise. You kneel to it because you lack something better." Tullius's eyes narrowed. And then the Emperor did something that shocked everyone. He touched Tullius's forehead with 2 fingers. Tullius jolted as if struck by lightning. Images flooded his mind. Stars, endless wars, cities of steel, Humans marching in billions, alien monsters consuming worlds, gods screaming in the dark. And at the center of it all a golden throne built from sacrifice. Tullius gasped and staggered back, face pale. What was that? The Emperor's voice was calm. A reminder, he said, that your war is small. Then the Emperor turned. Bring me your diplomats, he commanded. Bring me your spies, bring me your historians, and bring me any parchment that explains the Thalmor. Tullius's mouth opened. He wanted to protest. But the command hit something deeper than pride. It hit obedience to true authority. Yes, Tullius said hoarsely. Meanwhile, in Windhelm, Ulfric Stormcloak heard rumors of a golden emperor and dismissed them as imperial propaganda. Until the emperor arrived at the palace of the kings, the doors opened without being touched. The hearth fire dimmed. Ulfric stood from his throne like a man preparing to fight a dragon. You, Ulfric said. Another imperial trick. The emperor approached, ignoring every blade in the room. Ulfric's hand trembled slightly. Not fear, rage. You claim to be an emperor? Ulfric hissed. Skyrim bows to no empire. The emperor stopped. He looked at Ulfric as one looks at a wolf growling at a mountain. You do not know what an empire is, the emperor said. Ulfric stepped forward. I know men who think they can chain us. The emperor's gaze hardened slightly. No, he said. You know cowards who confuse bureaucracy for dominance. Ulfric blinked unexpectedly thrown. The emperor continued. I have watched your rebellion, he said. It is brave, it is foolish, it is manipulated. Ulfric's voice rose. The Thalmor, yes, the emperor said sharply, and the single word dropped like a hammer. Ulfric froze. The emperor walked past him, toward the great map on the table. He placed a finger on Skyrim. Then he dragged it slightly, as if moving a piece on a board. Ulfric watched in disbelief. On the map, the ink shifted. Borders moved like living things. You fight over lines, the emperor said. While your world rots. Ulfric's voice came lower. If you are so powerful, why not end it? The emperor turned back, eyes fierce now. Because, he said, you must learn what unity costs. Ulfric scoffed. Unity is slavery. The emperor stepped forward until he stood inches from Ulfric. No, he said. Unity is survival. Ulfric's throat tightened. The emperor spoke the next words like a verdict. You will either stand with mankind, he said, or you will be removed from it. Ulfric's fingers clenched. And then, unbelievably, Ulfric felt something he had not felt since he was young. Doubt. Not doubt in his cause, but doubt in the scale of his understanding. The Thalmor did not fear Nords. They feared disorder only when it threatened their plan. But when reports reached the Thalmor embassy in solitude, reports of a golden being commanding imperial officers, reading dragon language, bending reality like cloth, fear entered their political calculations. That same night, Elenwen, justiciar of the Thalmor, arranged a diplomatic meeting. She arrived with guards, smiling as if she were the sun. In a private chamber in solitude, she faced the emperor. Her eyes did not widen at his armor. She was too proud for that. Instead, she spoke smoothly. You are not from Tamriel, she said, and yet you interfere. The emperor watched her as if studying a parasite. What are you? Elenwen asked again, slightly sharper. The emperor leaned forward. You, he said, are the reason this world will burn. Elenwen's smile tightened. Careful. The Dominion does not, the emperor interrupted with a gesture. The room shifted, not physically. Conceptually, the Thalmor guards suddenly felt their minds exposed like their souls had been stripped naked. They staggered. Elenwen's expression faltered for the first time. The emperor spoke softly. I have fought beings older than your species, he said. I have burned arrogant empires who believed immortality made them right. He stared into Elenwen's eyes. You are not special, he said. You are merely loud. Elenwen's voice tightened. We seek to correct the world. The Emperor's gaze sharpened. You seek to unmake it, he said. And you call your madness philosophy. Elenwen tried to maintain her calm, but her eyes flicked slightly, an involuntary betrayal of fear. You will not threaten the Dominion. The Emperor stood. And when he stood, it felt like the room became too small to contain him. I do not threaten, he said. He stepped closer. I decide, he said. Then he raised his hand. Elenwen's breath caught. For a moment, she saw herself dead, her body brittle like dried leaves, her soul shredded into fragments drifting in a void where even Aetherius had no light. She gasped. The Emperor lowered his hand. I will allow your dominion, he said quietly, to exist until I no longer find it useful. Elenwen's pride snapped. You cannot. The Emperor's voice became iron. I can. The word struck like a psychic blow. Elenwen stumbled back, eyes wide. The Emperor turned away as if she were already irrelevant. Leave, he said. And tell your masters that I am coming. Elenwen fled, and the Thalmor, for the first time in centuries, began to calculate what it would take to survive a real emperor. In Whiterun, the companions heard of the Golden Warlord and laughed at first. They were warriors. They valued strength in muscle, not mystery. In Jorvask, Kodlak Whitemane listened carefully. He had seen too much to dismiss prophecy. When the Emperor arrived at their hall, the companions gathered like wolves around a new beast. Vilkas stepped forward, blade drawn. You look like a rich man in armor, Vilkas said. But Skyrim isn't impressed by gold. The Emperor looked at him. Show me, Vilkas demanded. The Emperor tilted his head slightly. Then Vilkas attacked. His sword swung with trained power, fast, brutal. The Emperor did not move. The blade stopped inches from the Emperor's throat. Frozen in mid-air, Vilkas's face contorted in shock as his muscles refused to obey him. The Emperor stepped forward slowly, and the sword moved backward with him still suspended, still trapped. The Emperor reached out, tapped the blade once. The metal disintegrated into fine dust. Silence slammed into the hall. Vilkas stared at his empty grip. The Emperor turned to the others. You call yourselves warriors, he said. You are children playing at violence. Skjor snarled and charged. The Emperor lifted his hand slightly. Skjor slammed to the floor as if gravity had doubled. He groaned, unable to rise. Ayla the huntress drew her bow, eyes fierce. Enough, Kodlak roared. The Emperor looked at Kodlak. Kodlak stepped forward, old but proud. You are powerful, Kodlak said, but power doesn't make you honorable. The Emperor studied him, then he nodded once slowly. A true warrior, he said quietly, is not one who kills. Kodlak blinked. The Emperor continued. A true warrior, he said, is one who chooses what to kill and what to protect. Kodlak held his gaze. What do you protect, then? Kodlak asked. The Emperor's eyes darkened. Mankind, he said, even when it does not deserve it. There was something heavy in that sentence. Something like ancient grief. The companions, for the first time, did not mock. They listened. Kodlak spoke again. If you intend to change Skyrim, he said, know that Skyrim bites back. The Emperor's expression did not change. I expect nothing less, he said. Winterhold was ruin and arrogance. The college stood above the broken cliff like a stubborn monument, surrounded by suspicion. Nords muttered that mages caused disasters. Mages muttered that Nords were ignorant. When the Emperor arrived, the bridge did not tremble. It bowed. Inside the Hall of the Elements, mages gathered, curious and cautious. Archmage Savos Aren greeted him with forced calm. You're welcome at the college, Savos said carefully, if you come in peace. The Emperor's gaze moved across the hall, scanning wards and spells like a man reading crude graffiti. I do not come in peace, he said. Savos stiffened. Then why? I come in order. He walked toward the central dais without asking permission. Colette Merens whispered, "Divines preserve us." Mirabelle Irvine stepped forward, hand glowing with prepared spellwork. "You will not threaten." The Emperor raised a hand. All magic in the room died. Not dispelled, not blocked, it simply ceased. Mirabelle's eyes widened as her spell fizzled into nothing. Savos's face tightened in alarm. "What did you just do?" The Emperor turned. "I have dampened your field," he said. "Your energies are not fundamental, they are parasitic." Savos swallowed. "Magica is the blood of Aetherius." The Emperor's eyes sharpened. "Aetherius," he repeated thoughtfully. "A higher dimensional energy reservoir." The mages stared. He spoke of their theology like engineering. The Emperor stepped closer to the Eye of Magnus display, examining the artifact like a scientist. "This," he said, "is dangerous." Savos exhaled. "Yes, we are investigating." The Emperor cut him off. "You are worshipping it," he said coldly, "even as you claim scholarship." Then he placed his palm against the eye's casing. The eye flared violently, blue light exploding outward. The mages screamed and raised wards. The Emperor stood still. The light rushed at him and bent around him like water around stone. He stared into the eye as if staring into a hole in the universe. And then he spoke. A single word, not in dragon tongue, not in any language of men, a psychic command. The eye went quiet, dead silent, even the light faded. Savos staggered, trembling. "What did you do?" The Emperor looked at him. "I asserted ownership," he said. The college fell into terrified reverence, because it had become obvious. This was not a mage. This was something that made mages feel like peasants holding candles. The Dark Brotherhood did not consider themselves merely killers. They were faith. They were ritual murder made sacred. When word reached them that a golden emperor walked Skyrim like an omen, Astrid laughed. "Everything bleeds," she said, so she sent assassins. 3 of them. They found him on the road between Falkreath and Riverwood, walking alone through the snow as if winter served him. The first arrow struck. It stopped in mid-air inches from his cloak. The assassin behind the tree froze. The Emperor turned his head slightly. The arrow rotated slowly in the air, then reversed direction. It shot back through the woods and pinned the assassin to the tree by the throat. The second assassin charged with a dagger coated in poison. He reached striking distance. Then his arms snapped outward as if pulled by invisible chains. His bones cracked. He screamed. The Emperor walked past him like he didn't exist. The third assassin, trembling, fell to his knees. "Mercy," the assassin whispered. The Emperor looked down at him. "Who sent you?" he asked. The assassin stammered. The Dark Brotherhood." The Emperor paused. "The worshippers of death," he murmured. He turned his gaze upward as if seeing beyond mountains. Then he spoke softly, not to the assassin, but to the world itself. "Interesting," he said. "Your realm has a death cult structured like an organization." He looked back down. "You will take a message." The assassin nodded desperately. "Tell your matron," the Emperor said, "that death is not sacred." His eyes hardened. "Death," he said, "is a tool." Then he released the assassin not from kindness, but because fear was a better messenger than corpses. That night, Astrid felt something crawling in her soul. Not Sithis, something else, something heavier, something that did not worship death, something that owned it. In Riften, greed was air. The Thieves Guild had survived by understanding power, bribing it, avoiding it, feeding it. Brynjolf saw the Emperor enter the marketplace and immediately realized 3 things. This man was rich beyond reason. This man was dangerous beyond reason. This man's eyes did not look like a mortal's. Still, Brynjolf was Brynjolf. He approached smoothly. "Never done an honest day's work in your life, have you?" Brynjolf joked. The Emperor looked at him. Brynjolf's smile faltered slightly. The Emperor spoke. "I have worked," he said, "more than you can imagine." Brynjolf swallowed. "Right. Well, Riften's a rough city, friend. You should keep your—" The Emperor walked past him. Brynjolf felt his instincts scream not to follow, but curiosity pulled him. Later, in the Ratway, a thief tried to pickpocket the Emperor. The thief's fingers touched the Emperor's cloak, and the thief collapsed, not dead. Just unconscious, mind crushed under psychic recoil. Mercer Frey watched from the shadows. He realized something cold. This wasn't a man you could steal from. And in that moment, even Nocturnal's shadow felt less certain. When the Emperor approached Fort Dawnguard, Isran met him with suspicion and steel. "You look like a warrior," Isran said, "but you're no Dawnguard." The Emperor's gaze moved over the fort, the weapons, the discipline. "You fight monsters," he said. Isran nodded. "Vampires, undead filth." The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "Yes," he said. "Undead." The word came with contempt. Isran leaned forward. "If you're here to join," the Emperor cut him off. "I do not join," he said. "I command." Then he turned away, because he had sensed something far worse than vampires. Castle Volkihar, a nest of parasite nobility drinking men like wine. He arrived at the castle gates alone. The guards laughed at him. Then the laughter died as the gate opened by itself. Inside, Harkon stepped forward, pale and regal, eyes predatory. "Well," Harkon purred, "a mortal wearing gold. Are you lost?" The Emperor looked at him. Harkon flinched. Not physically, mentally. It felt like staring into the sun. "What are you?" Harkon hissed. The Emperor walked closer. "I am," he said, "the end of your kind." Harkon smiled, forcing confidence. "You think yourself powerful. I am immortal." The Emperor stopped inches from him. "No," he said softly. "You are stoled." Harkon snarled, fangs revealed. "I will drink you dry." He lunged. The Emperor did not move. Harkon slammed into an invisible barrier and shattered it like glass, then froze in place, suspended in mid-air like a pinned insect. The Emperor raised his hand. Harkon's body began to burn not with fire, but with light, psychic light. Soul-burning light. Harkon screamed as centuries of stolen blood boiled inside him. The vampires recoiled. Serana stared in horror, eyes wide. The Emperor spoke, voice calm amid the screaming. "Immortality without purpose," he said, "is rot." Then he clenched his fist. Harkon exploded into ash. Silence followed. Serana trembled. The Emperor looked at her. "You are not like him," he said. Serana swallowed. What are you?" The Emperor's voice softened slightly. "A father," he said. Serana blinked, confused. Then the Emperor turned and left Castle Volkihar in ruins without looting it, without celebrating. Because extermination was not entertainment, it was sanitation. Dragons returned across Skyrim. Villages burned, holds panicked, men prayed to gods that did not answer, and then they began hearing rumors of a golden warlord who walked through fire untouched. Rumors of a man who spoke once and broke a dragon's will. At Kynesgrove, a dragon attacked a burial mound. The Emperor arrived. The dragon roared, wings spreading, flames building. The Emperor raised his hand. The flames died mid-air. The dragon blinked. It did not understand. The Emperor spoke not in Thu'um, not in mortal language. He spoke directly into the dragon's mind. "Kneel." The dragon's legs collapsed. It slammed to the ground like a mountain falling. The Emperor stepped forward. "Your species," he said, "is a tool in this world's mythology." The dragon tried to resist, eyes burning with hate. The Emperor placed his hand on the dragon's skull and extracted knowledge. Not gently. He tore the dragon's understanding open like a book and read its pages. The dragon screamed psychically, then it died, not slain by sword, slain by mind. And in Sovngarde, in whatever metaphysical arena Alduin ruled, Alduin felt it. He felt a dragon die in a way dragons were not supposed to die. Alduin, eater of worlds, shivered. Because something had arrived in Skyrim that did not fear myth. It did not fear prophecy. It did not fear gods. It feared only failure. Delphine found the Emperor first. She was cautious, bitter, obsessed with dragons. She watched him from a distance, recognizing the weight of him. When she approached him in Riverwood, she kept her hand near her dagger. "You," she said, "you're not from here." The Emperor nodded slightly. "Correct." Delphine narrowed her eyes. "Are you here to stop Alduin?" The Emperor stared at her. "I am here," he said, "to end instability." Delphine blinked. "That's not an answer." The Emperor stepped closer. "It is the only answer that matters," he said. Delphine swallowed but pressed on. "The blades serve the Dragonborn. We serve the world." The Emperor's eyes hardened. "You serve vengeance," he corrected, "and call it duty." Delphine stiffened. "We kill dragons." The Emperor leaned slightly forward. "So do I," he said softly, and Delphine realized with cold certainty the blades were irrelevant now. Meanwhile, the greybeards grew deeply unsettled. The Emperor's constant use of power disturbed the mountain itself. The voice once thought the greatest force in Skyrim now felt small. Arngeir confronted him again. "You disrupt the world," Arngeir said. "You are not meant to be here." The Emperor looked at him. "Nothing is meant," the Emperor replied. "Everything is made." Arngeir's voice shook with anger. "You cannot simply overwrite destiny." The Emperor paused, then spoke with quiet intensity. "I have overwritten gods," he said. "Do not threaten me with destiny." It began subtly. A whisper in the wind, a shifting in dreams. Daedric princes were not gods in the mortal sense. They were concepts with appetite. They influenced Skyrim through temptation, through bargains, through madness. And now an intruder existed that did not bargain. The first to test him was Sheogorath. The mad god appeared on a road, clapping his hands. Oh, look at you," Sheogorath said. "A walking sunrise with daddy issues. I love it." The Emperor stopped. Sheogorath leaned in, grinning. "You know, I could make you laugh. I could make you cry. I could turn your golden armor into cheese." The Emperor stared at him. "You are a parasite," the Emperor said. Sheogorath blinked, then laughed harder. "Parasite? That's a new one." The Emperor's voice became colder. "You are not madness," he said. "You are indulgence given form." Sheogorath's grin slowly faded. For the first time, the mad god looked curious. "Oh," Sheogorath whispered. "You are no fun at all." The Emperor raised a hand. The air tightened. Sheogorath's expression shifted into sudden anger. "You can't," the Emperor spoke quietly. "Leave." And Sheogorath vanished, not laughing. Elsewhere, Molag Bal reached for the Emperor's mind, trying to taste domination, and Molag Bal recoiled. Because domination did not exist in the Emperor's vocabulary, only control, and control was already owned. Mehrunes Dagon raged. Hermaeus Mora watched hungrily. Azura whispered warnings into dreams. Even Nocturnal felt her shadows tremble, because something had arrived in Skyrim that Daedra could not manipulate. A being who did not desire, a being who did not negotiate, a being who simply decided. The final clash did not happen where mortals expected. Not on a battlefield, not in a hold, not in Sovngarde alone. It happened in the space where myth becomes real. The Emperor stood atop the throat of the world. The sky churned. Alduin descended like a burning apocalypse, wings blotting out the sun. The greybeards watched from high Hrothgar in terror. Even Paarthurnax watched uncertain. Alduin roared, "You are not of this world." Alduin thundered in Dovazul, "You are an intruder." The Emperor did not shout back. He simply spoke in the dragon language. "I am an intruder," the Emperor said. He raised his hand. "And I have invaded far worse." Alduin spewed fire. The Emperor walked through it. His armor glowed, but it did not melt. The fire broke on him like waves breaking on a cliff. Alduin's eyes widened. The Emperor lifted both hands, and the sky cracked. Not lightning, A crack in reality itself. Psychic pressure slammed into Alduin like a planet. Alduin screamed and fought back, calling on prophecy, on fate, on the old structure of the world that said he was inevitable. The Emperor stepped closer. "You are not inevitable," he said. He reached up, grabbed Alduin by the throat mid-air without touching him physically, and pulled. Alduin slammed into the mountain hard enough to split stone. Snow exploded upward. The Emperor approached slowly, cloak whipping in the storm. Alduin tried to rise. The Emperor spoke one word, a command. A psychic absolute. Silence. Alduin's voice died. The dragon's thuum vanished. The Eater of Worlds lay mute. The Emperor placed his hand on Alduin's head. "Your world created you," the Emperor said softly, "because it believed it needed you." He looked down, eyes cold with certainty. "It does not." Then he tore Alduin's soul apart, not into absorption like Dragonborn, but into annihilation. Alduin screamed once without voice. Then he vanished, not slain as a beast, erased as a concept. The sky cleared. The throat of the world grew still, and Skyrim, for the first time in ages, felt quiet, as if the world itself had been holding its breath under prophecy. Skyrim celebrated. Bards sang. Jarls argued over who deserved credit. The Empire and Stormcloaks negotiated under new fear. The Greybeards prayed. The College wrote frantic theories. The Dawnguard sharpened weapons. The Dark Brotherhood hid deeper. The Thieves Guild stopped stealing from certain roads. And the Thalmor, terrified, began preparing for war they could not understand, because Alduin was gone. But Skyrim had not become safe. Skyrim had become claimed. The Emperor stood on a hill overlooking the land. He watched the smoke from holds. He listened to the prayers to the divines. He tasted the Daedric influence still lingering, and he spoke to the wind. "This world is human," he said, "therefore it will be mine." He turned and began walking toward the horizon, not as a visitor, not as a hero, but as a force that had arrived with one purpose: to bring unity whether Skyrim wanted it or not.